Good morning, my people, my people, my people. My name is Chief Strongblood, St. Vincent and the Grenadines' favorite and most hated son, the diaspora machismo. My people, yesterday when I left you, we were speaking about the promises, the election promises that Ralph Gonsalves made just before he took the reins of Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Promises that he never kept. We said that he promised 1,000 jobs in the first 100 days. He never kept that. He never created a job in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He said he was going to bring new industries to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He never kept that. He never created an industry in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He said he's going to bring foreign investors in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to develop our country. He brought in criminals like David Ames, who ran away with St. Vincent's money and refused to pay the workers and were underpaying the workers. He never kept an election promise. He also said that in the first year he's going to bring integrity legislation. And we asked yesterday, why would a criminal who have criminal habits enact laws that will come back to bite him in the butt? Yesterday we spoke of Ralph Gonsalves' sexual misconduct, rapes, and sexual assault. I told you about Michelle Andrews. I told you about Margaret Parson. I told you about Miranda Woods. And I told you about his colleague, the professor in Barbados, who he raped and had to abscond from Barbados with the aid of Burns Bonady and Captain King of Union Islands, who dressed him up in a lady's garb, smuggle him onto the wharf, get him onto Mr. King's boat. Mr. King brought him to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Today I'm going to tell you a story that I've spoke a few times, but not many people will ever remember. In the early 70s, people in the country on the Leeward and Windward side will not know this, but the people in the Kingston area who are like 50 and above may remember this, because I know a lot of people have a lot of short memory. In the early 70s, there was a man who would disguise himself and walk around with a machete or cutlass, and he will roam Buckwhite, the disco in Edinburgh. He will roam the area of Phil's Disco in Kittles, and he will roam the area of Roseau. And this man will use his cutlass as a means of threatening people, particularly women, trying to rape these women at cutlass point. There were several reports that were made to the police. Every time there was a function at Phil's, Roseau, or Buckwhite, this man will either attack one of them. And these three discos normally have sessions on the weekend. You would hear the stories over and over in Kingston. It never made the newspaper. I can't remember if it made the newspaper. I never heard it on the radio. But it does not mean that it never made the news. Now listen to what happened. The police put out a sting operation. They were patrolling these three discos. And one morning, about 2 o'clock, they apprehended a man. The man had a disguise. The man had a machete. And they took him to Kingston Police Station. They apprehended this man at Bumprove, below the Fort Charlotte, where Mr. Aki lived down there. So this man had the garb of the attacker. He had the weapons of the attacker. So they arrested him and took him to the police station. He was later released, because the commissioner of police at the time said This man was too nice to be the attacker. The commissioner of police were basing a person's character based on the color of his skin. They were expecting it to be a black man, but the attacker turned out to be Ralph Gonsalves. They say he's too nice. He is white. He's a Caucasian. He will never do a thing like that. How did I know this? My father was very good friends with Deputy Commissioner Ben Jackson. Mr. Jackson always frequented my father's shop. And on the morning that they apprehended Ralph Gonsalves with the mask and the machete, Ben Jackson passed by my father and told him that we got the man. Later on that day, Ben Jackson returned to my father's shop and told my father, the commissioner of police said, the man is too nice. He cannot be the man, because he was expecting it to be a black person. And he let him go. My father was so upset. My father started arguing. With Mr. Jackson, with Deputy Commissioner Jackson, and said, you got the man, you got the right man, and you release him. You let the criminal back on the streets. I was a kid in my father's shop listening to this conversation. I didn't fully understand what was happening. My people, fast forward several years later, Ralph Gonsalves was accused of raping the university professor, his colleague in Barbados, the University of the West Indies, Caville campus. Bonds Bonady and Captain King smuggled Ralph Gonsalves out of Barbados and bring him back to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, he's out of a job. People know that he was a professor in Barbados and he was thrown out of Barbados. They didn't know he was smuggled out at the time. Now, they wanted to know why Ralph Gonsalves was smuggled. First he said, because of his communist views. He's a communist and he have communist views, and they threw him out of Barbados. Then he says, the Prime Minister of Barbados was having sex with one of the lecturers, and he booked the Prime Minister of Barbados, and the Prime Minister of Barbados caused him to be fired. All of them are lying. So now, when the local guys heard that Ralph Gonsalves booked the Prime Minister of Barbados, they think that he's a wife man, he's a cut man. And they start keeping him around and encouraging him. He joined ULIMO. When he joined ULIMO, the mistake that he did, this is what is going to qualify how I know it's Ralph Gonsalves that the Deputy Commissioner let go, because at that age, I couldn't put one and one together yet. But I remember the conversation. I remember it good. When Ralph Gonsalves joined ULIMO, ULIMO was operating in Mrs. Thelma John's house, which is a house right next to our house. And he wanted to play a big shot because he was a lawyer, a university professor, who come back to St. Vincent. And he was hailed by all of the guys around the area. And everyone appeared to like the white boy. So he wanted to play a big shot. He came to my father's shop to introduce himself and to say, well, I am a member of the ULIMO, because Don Driggs and all of these guys used to get along with my father, members of ULIMO. And when my father saw him, and when my father heard his name, my father remembered what Deputy Commissioner Ben Jackson told him and who he was. And added to that, my father and Prime Minister Milton Cato was very good friends. Milton Cato used to come to my father, and my father was one of Milton Cato's confidants. And when Ralph Gonsalves was accused of raping the university professor in Barbados, the Prime Minister of Barbados, called St. Vincent, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent, and informed him what has happened. And I think they were trying to get him sent back, but they didn't have no legal grounds for sending him back. Remember, Milton Cato was a lawyer. So Milton Cato discussed that with my father. So when my father realized who was in his shop, a man who was attacking women in St. Vincent and the Grenadines at Cutlass Point, just in a mass. The same man who my father knew was the man who was attacking those people. Now he had confirmation the same man raped or was accused of raping a university professor in Barbados. My father said, "Get out of my shop and don't you ever come into my shop. Don't you ever come into my shop." By this time, I am grown. I can understand things now. Randy Duprell, Leo Duprell's father, was in the shop with my father. He said, "Soapy, you can't treat your customers like that. He can bring good business for you. He's a reputable young man." My father said to Mr. Duprell, "I don't want any business he can bring to my shop." And then my father proceeded to explain to Mr. Duprell why he threw him out of his shop. My father gave Mr. Duprell the story as to what was happening a few years ago in the early 70s when he was apprehended by the police and they released him because he was too nice. My father told Mr. Duprell that Ralph Gonsalves is the man that was attacking our women coming from Buckwhite, Fellows, and Roseau earlier in the decade. He also told him what Prime Minister Cato told him, that Ralph Gonsalves raped one of his colleagues at the University of the West Indies. I was present. Donald Dewicks came over. So my father and Donald Dewicks had a very good friendship. Donald Dewicks was red-skinned, but he had African hair. And my father used to always heckle Donald Dewicks and say, "Dewicks, I don't know how these guys allow a white man to come into their group." And Dewicks used to play it off, and they used to get together and have a conversation and so forth. Donald Dewicks come over and asked my father why he threw Ralph Gonsalves out of his shop. Right? But I don't know what was the conversation, because I left after Ralph Gonsalves, after I heard what he did, I left and I ran upstairs because I had to process what I just heard. And if you think I'm lying, ask Donald Dewicks. Mr. Duprell is dead. Ask Donald Dewicks. I send many of you to ask Mr. Duprell. I don't know if you all ever asked Mr. Duprell. But this is one of the reasons why Ralph Gonsalves could not have enact integrity legislation, because he knew he has a problem with integrity. He has a problem with honesty. He has a problem with decency. He has a friend in criminality. My name is Chief Strongblood. St. Vincent and the Grenadines' favorite and most hated son of the diaspora machismo. My people, Ralph Gonsalves' people is already on the scene. Let them take that. Are gone.